Everybody. How's everybody doing? Bryan Clayton here, CEO, co-founder of GreenPal, here to answer your questions this month. Let's get into it. First question from Joshua Cortez. Question they asked: Am I being lazy? That's a good question. Let's see. Business description and background. I get more work done remotely at Panera Bread or in the car than in my home. That is in my room. My home office is in my room. My room is small, but the windows are small. I can't see nature. My office desk is in my room, but so is my bed. I seem to get more work done when I'm able to stare at nature than when I'm in the car or when I'm at Panera Bread. Is there a way to set things up to be more productive? Okay, so I don't think you're being lazy because you're taking action. You're recognizing that you might have a problem that when you're at the house, you're just not as productive as you feel you should be, and so you're trying to fix that by getting yourself out in public at a Panera Bread or just in the car. Um, don't feel bad about that. I feel the same way sometimes. When I was first starting GreenPal, my company now, I rented an office, even though I could have very easily worked from my home where I live, but I rented an office because I felt like uh, when I went to the office, something switched. I felt like when I was in the office, it was game time and it was grind time and it was work time, and I was able to just set a goal to spend 10 or 15 hours a day in that office, even though the office had no windows. I was able to set a goal that when 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 I was in the office, it was grind time. It was time to get stuff done. And then when I was outside of the office, that was when I was able to relax a little bit. So I think that's okay. Um, what I would recommend is maybe you sign up for membership at a co-working place, and you can get a membership at a WeWork, or if there's not a WeWork in your town, you can. There's a tons of other co-working places for sometimes as little as $100 a month, $200 a month, and something happens there. You're in a public place, and other people are working, and sometimes you can feed off that energy and you can feed off that vibe. So and maybe there isn't one in your town, or maybe that's just not a maybe you can't afford that right now. So I think until then, working in a Panera Bread, working in a Starbucks, working at your public library, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, I feel fine with that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with when you're at home, you feel like it's time to switch off work, and then when you get out of the house, it's time to get on your grind. I see no problem with that. And you just stick with what's working. You've noticed that you have an increase in motivation and in energy when you're outside of your home to get stuff done. Then I wouldn't mess with that. I wouldn't try to fix the home office situation. I would I would double down on going to work at the public library, going to work at the Starbucks, at the Panera Bread, at the coffee shop, looking at a WeWork at a co-working facility, and doubling down on that because you've realized something about yourself, and don't fight that. Next question, also from Josh. When do I need to stop outsourcing and buy the tools? Sorry, different Josh. I was getting ready to say buy the tools. That doesn't sound like the same Josh. This is from Joshua Grant. When do I need to stop outsourcing and buy tools machines to do it in house? I am a welding and fabrication business that fabricates a lot of metal products. Our products are powder coated. There is a better way of painting that lasts a lot longer if it's done correctly. My problem is that taking a lot of my parts, it's taking a lot longer to get my parts done, 2 weeks, and I feel it's hurting my cash flow. A project that we can finish in a week and then take to a powder coat, then wait 2 weeks, then install and deliver, then wait to get paid. The company that does this service is getting larger and larger. In the past, it takes them 3 to 5 days. The equipment costs around $75,000 turnkey. Last year, I spent $20,000 with them. How can I calculate the ROI? And if I make an investment to bring this in house, what else should I take into consideration? Okay. You have to be careful when accumulating equipment and accumulating tools and trying to bring things in house. A lot of times, your whole business can just become one big warehouse full of tools and machinery and assets that are all depreciating in value. So on the one hand, if your core competency is welding and fabrication, and this one piece of the process is powder coating, when should you bring that in house versus continuing to outsource it? I'm okay with bringing it in house if it's part of the core competency, but one thing I see a lot of entrepreneurs that they fall victim to is forgetting that they're in the business of making money and not in the business of acquiring tools and equipment. Particularly in a business I had a landscaping company that I grew to over 100 employees, and we had 90 trucks. And one thing I noticed about my competitors, and at times with myself, we would buy equipment that we really didn't need, or we would buy equipment because we would conflate that with success. And so just keep that in the back of your mind. It doesn't sound like what you're dealing with here. It sounds like you thought this through. Just looking at the numbers, I don't know that it makes sense just yet because 75 grand, you spent 20 grand. That means, you know, just because you spent 20 grand doesn't mean you're going to save 20 grand because you're also going to have to pay the labor cost to do the powder coating and also the material cost. So one thing I would try to figure out is of the 20,000, just rough envelope math on the back of the envelope, how much of that do you think was labor and powder coating material? I'm willing to bet of the 20, I'm willing to bet 5,000 of it was labor, and I'm willing to bet $2,000 of it was powder coating material. I could be shockingly close, or I could be wrong. But let's just say, just for an example, of the 20 you spent, if you had the powder coating machine, it would still cost you $5,000 to $7,000 of dead cost to still do the powder coating. So you're really only saving 12 grand. And then so at 75,000, it's going to take you roughly 5 to 6 years to pay this machine back, and that's not a real good turnaround time on bringing equipment in house. You really want to get your money back in a year or two. At least that's how we looked at it when we were running a landscaping business and we had $2 or $3 million of equipment. If we couldn't make our money back by bringing in a piece of machinery that cost 75 grand, if we didn't think we could make that money back in 2 years and it was really like clear, then we wouldn't do it. So that's how I would look at this. Now, there might be something to be said. You could pick up some more efficiencies. You might be able to increase sales a little bit, and maybe your sales are increasing, and maybe it might hurt your cash flow. It might improve your cash flow, and also help you maybe get more market share because you can turn this stuff around quicker. And so if that's the case, then maybe it's part of your calculus. You can say, well, yeah, I can save 10 or 15 grand a year, but also I really believe I can make another 10 or 20 grand a year in sales or 50 grand a year in sales. And if that's the case, try to get to where you have just a basic calculus where I know I can increase sales and decrease expenses, and I can pay this thing off in a year or two, then do it. But also don't BS yourself. Really try to figure out, okay, I know this customer will give me more work if I can do the powder coating in-house. And if you can really like put a gun to your head and know that that's the truth, and not be delusional about it, then go for it. The other thing I would tell you is $75,000 is a lot of money. You probably don't have that laying around, so you're inclined to finance or lease it. Be very careful and scared of debt and lease payments when running a business like this. It can be, a small business can be the greatest thing that ever happened to you, but it can also be a chain around your neck. So just be mindful that, if we go through another housing downturn or we go through another crisis, if everything goes to zero, can you still make the payments? Can you still service the debt for the equipment that your business is needing? I would try to as best I could save the money up and pay cash for this thing, and also try to find a used one. Maybe if a new one. Hope that helps. Next question is from Cody Hendrickson. How do I get above barely enough? It seems that when I was an employee, my paycheck was barely enough. Now I am a business owner and I'm making more money in the business than I ever have, but it's still barely enough. Why is this? It's a strange phenomenon, and I've experienced it myself. Um, your expenses and your overhead are always going to like swell to to whatever the revenue is. It's just a weird thing that happens. So don't feel bad. It happens to all of us. The way you can get by, you can one way you can tackle this. There's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon that I like, and one of the things it's a book about an ancient like biblical story, and one of the key points of this book is the concept around paying yourself first, meaning every month the business pays you your salary before it pays anything else. And you might say, well, that's crazy. I have to pay my vendors. I have to pay my taxes. I have to pay my employees. I have to pay my office rent. I have to pay all my overhead. And the thing is that um, it's a strange thing. If you pay yourself first, then all of these other things kind of like get back in check. And it's hard to do, but if you can do it and you can do it right, then the exercise of paying yourself first causes you to seek better quotes from your vendors, causes you to look for more efficiencies in your business, causes you to make more sales, causes you to return phone calls to customers back in 15 minutes rather than 24 hours because you know you have to pay yourself as almost a bill. So that would be one way I would look at it. The other thing is your business is probably leaking money somewhere. You know, you're probably uh, it's possible that there's some efficiencies that can be picked up, and it also sounds like in the dynamics of business ownership, you're in the self-employed bracket. You know, you got a job, you're employed, or you are self-employed, or you are a business owner, or you're an investor. There's four quadrants. That's the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow quadrant. Is a great book if you want to read it. And so you're in one of those quadrants. And so it sounds like you were an employee. Now you've moved into being self-employed. So you don't actually own a business. You're just self-employed, and you're trying to get into business ownership, which is a big leap. Um, and and many people never make it. They always stay stuck in that self-employment quadrant. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you can make good money being self-employed, you can reinvest those proceeds into other things like real estate. But if you're really trying to get into business ownership, you have to spend less time working in the business and spend more time working on the business. You have to create systems and processes around you that lead to profit. And a great book about that is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I'd recommend reading that book and revisiting it once a year because that book is all about the problem that you're in right now, which is you're spinning your wheels and basically you've created a nice job for yourself, but you don't have a business yet. Next question is from Felicia Giozelis. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. What is the most effective way to begin organizing employee roles and job responsibilities? Background: I have worked with my virtual assistant as a contractor for 5 years, and we both do it all. No clear boundaries or job roles. She's based in the Philippines and worked for me for 5 years. And now she's asking for more money, but I'm not making enough yet to make that happen. She started at 7 per hour and now makes 12. She turned her company into an agency and outsources a lot of my work to others who make a lot of mistakes, which is taking me more time and doubling and energy to double check all the time. I know there are a lot of areas where my business can be simplified and automated, but I'm not sure how to get all of this organized and where can I begin? Well, it's good that you have a virtual assistant and that you're outsourcing things. Um, the the red flag is that I sense here is that we both do it all, and so there should be high leverage tasks that only you can do, and there should be remedial routine tasks that your virtual assistant can do. So first, let's separate those things like data entry, um, rudimentary like data entry into bookkeeping software, sending out invoices, maybe even answering the phone and setting up appointments. Maybe that um, basic routine things around marketing and sending out cold emails from an email list, things of that sort that anybody can do that that you've done a million times. You know how to do it, and then you can offload these things to a virtual assistant. High leverage tasks like customer facing things, closing the deal, working on these systems and processes, looking at the strategy of the business and what we're doing, looking at our profitability and figuring out if we're making money on jobs or not, looking at the competitive landscape and how we are comparing against our competitors, looking at online reviews and what people are saying about our business, and trying to figure out if we're making people happy or not. That's your job as the founder. You can't outsource those things. You can later on, but when you're much bigger. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would do is I would read the book 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And a lot of people have read that book and still think it is about working 4 hours a week, and that's not what it's about. That book is about delegation, it's about outsourcing, it's about exactly what it is you're talking about doing. And what you'll notice reading that book is you have to get really granular and really specific about what it is you want somebody to do for you. You can't just say, virtual assistant, it's me and you, and we're in this together, and let's just tag team everything. No, it's really like, here's what I want you to do. Here's how I want you to do it. Here's how long I think it should take. Here's how we grade your performance. Here's when I expect it back by, and here's when I want you to do it every week. And if you can't hit all of these benchmarks, then I got to get somebody else. That's how you have to approach it. You have to really look at it from like at that granular level. It can't just be you and your virtual assistant in there just doing everything. So I would read that book, The 4 Hour Work Week. I would also read The E Myth by Michael Gerber. That book is about delegation, which is what you're struggling with, and going through the exercise of creating an org chart for your business. You know, who is head of customer service, who's head of R&D, who's head of marketing, who's head of operations, who's head of human relations, who's head of all these things, and it's you. Your name is on all of these roles. And then, but maybe who's head of data entry for bookkeeping? Who is in charge of setting appointments for sales calls? You know who? And so then these little roles, these little small specific roles and tasks, you can delegate to freelancers. The other thing is, I have worked with virtual assistants, and at a tactical level, you might have a problem with this particular virtual assistant because she's now farming stuff out, or he's farming stuff out to other people. I don't like that. I don't like working with agencies. I like working with one person. You might have to pay a little more, but you need to be working with the person who's doing your job. You don't need to be working with an agency that's farming it out. At least that's been my experience. But that's probably like 5% of your problem. I don't want you to think like, oh, my problem is I have the wrong virtual assistant. No, your problem is you need to read the 4 Hour Work Week and do everything he says in that book, and really be clear about what the tasks are. Be clear about how you're delegating it, and have real specific metrics with how you gauge the success or failure of what people are doing for you, and then make changes based on that. Next question from AJ Couts. When to start a second business? I currently own a small digital marketing agency and do this full time. I'm considering starting another business that I can build over time once it's built, so I don't have to operate it. It runs itself through other contractors. I am wondering how that's going to distract me from growing my agency. What are things that I should take into consideration? My experience is it's really hard to be good at two things at the same time. Um, I would, if you want to get out of the agency business and into another business, I would create an evolution, like a transitional plan. Maybe you want to get out of digital marketing and you want to get into, you want to build, you want to build a mobile app or something like that, like what I have with GreenPal. Then I would create like a 1 or 2 year game plan to transition from one to the other. Um, the other thing I would say it's okay to take like your profits from your digital marketing agency and invest that in other sources of passive income like real estate. If you wanted to take your, let's say you made 300 grand a year running your digital marketing agency, and you lived on 100 grand, and you paid, another 100 grand in taxes, and then you had another 100 grand to invest, and you used that to go buy a rental house every year. That's awesome. That's basically two businesses, and the rental and the real estate is another form of cash flow to you. That's I'm cool with that. Um, what I think is a recipe for disaster, and it's going to be a waste of your time, is you have this digital marketing agency and you also want to open um, a coffee shop or a pool contracting business or maybe you know like a totally different business. I think is just going to be a waste of your time. Maybe when you say different business, maybe you mean something that's like congruent with what you're currently doing. So maybe you run a digital marketing agency and you also want to have a design, like a product design agency, or maybe you also want to have a small business consulting agency or something like that. And it's something that you can fold into the original business. I think could work. But my experience is that to make it in business, you got to be the best at what you do in your market, and it's really hard to do that um, two times at the same time. And the other one running itself with contractors, I think is a waste of time. Last question from Aurelio Elizararas. Elizararas. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. What is the best method of informing my clients that I am increasing their costs due to service uh, due to inflation? I am a lawn care landscaping business. I am asking this question because I have a client with whom I've had over 3 years, and I have never increased how much I charge for my services every year. He has increased what he charges his tenants. I have several of his properties, and his tenants inform me how he increases their rent every year, so I figured I should do something similar. Okay, be careful with this. I've spent 22 years in the landscaping business. The landscaping business is very price sensitive, so it's really hard to increase prices, and you kind of need to. And if you feel you need to increase prices, then it should be from a standpoint of this is how much it's costing me to do the service. This is how much I'm making, rather than I hear his tenants are getting their costs increased. Therefore, I feel like I should do something similar, which is exactly what you said. That is not That is not the position from which to increase somebody's price. Not I hear everything else is going up and gas is up, so I'm increasing your price. Because the reality is you could have a really good client on your hands who you're making really good profit on, and you could piss them off and drive them away through a price increase only because you think you should increase prices because everybody else is. And the other irrational thing I see is like gas prices going up, and everybody just wants to increase prices because gas prices are going up. Well, okay, yeah, I understand. Like, let's say you mow a yard for $100. How much of that is really fuel? I mean, how much? I mean, and like I don't know. Like it's relative, but how much of it is gas that it took to get to the property, and how much and gas that it took to actually mow the yard? It's probably $5, maybe a gallon of gas. And so if gas goes up 40%, then your increase is like $2 or $3 due to gas. But most people want to raise prices like $10 or $20 for that customer, like 10 or 20%, and that's irrational, and that's going to cause you to lose a customer. So If you decide to increase prices, and it sounds like this is a big customer for you, and if you lost this customer, it would hurt you. I would I would really first look at, okay, like how many man hours is it taking me to service this customer, and what do I need to make per man hour to pay myself, pay my employees, pay all of my overhead, and what is reasonable, and what is what are the economics behind that, and understanding what your cost per hour is, and if you have to hit that, if you're over or under that, and if you're under that, then you do need to increase prices, and you may have needed to increase prices a year or two ago. But if you're still over what those numbers need to be, then don't increase prices, because all that's going to happen is you're going to get fired and they're going to hire somebody else for cheaper. Hope that helps. See you guys next month. I enjoyed it, and keep hustling, keep grinding, and talk to you guys later. Bye bye.